skate to where the puck is going. So we report the stories before they happen, and the mainstream media tries to cover them up.
Ahead of curve.
And by the way, Joe is great. I'm glad you have him on. He's a great American, and now he's a great Ukrainian. Brazil. So we had round one. We talked about round two, and people there are convinced there's fraud. And forget the machines, forget the tabulation. We should talk about it. We shall talk about it. But what really needs to be discussed is the election fraud that's been perpetrated by the Supreme Court and its subsidiary court, the Supreme Electoral Court, both headed by a guy named Alexander de Moraes, who has broken the separation of powers and unilaterally, by diktat and fiat, censored and deplatformed and silenced and imprisoned and even exiled journalists, Bolsonaro-aligned politicians, has worked with the mainstream media to spin this narrative that Lula is rightfully elected. Well, tell that to the masses of people who have taken to the streets, who took to the streets to get Lula out 10 years ago, and who saw the convictions, 3 times convicted in courts across Brazil, and this Supreme Court annulled those convictions, turned over his conviction, and released him from prison so that he could run in this election, and they could then manipulate it through the way they distributed media, state-run, state-delivered distributed media for campaign videos and ads on radio and television. They penalized Bolsonaro in the days going up to the second round and took down his ads, wouldn't allow him to advertise, so that in some regions it was 90% to 10% distribution of pro-Lula ads. All of these things violative of the Brazilian constitution.
So how come this whole process is being portrayed in the international media as a great victory of democracy? Well, it's pretty hard to comprehend. You got millions of people on the streets right now in Brazil.
Well, I don't know if you've been to a country called Poland, where the mainstream media ran out an information warfare operation against the multiple times rightfully elected with democratic mandate in hand law and justice government. When countries move to the right of the plebiscite, of the volition of the people, the mainstream media works hand in glove with those global leftist political partisans to undermine it, to shift it, to coerce it, to control the outcome. And that's what the mainstream media is doing. Bolsonaro has not conceded. The New York Times ran out after he spoke on Tuesday, ran out, Bolsonaro concedes. He never conceded. He said, the Constitution allows for a transition. We will adhere to the Constitution. But he has the right with the military, according to the Brazilian Constitution.
It was the major headline back 2 days ago about Bolsonaro admitting that he lost the election. Well, he did not.
No.
He did not.
No. He admitted that.
At least this is what I saw on the mainstream media. This is the reason why I asked this question.
Well, you got to stop reading the BBC and The Guardian and TFON and the New York Times and the Washington Post and Foreign Policy and Foreign Affairs and The Economist.
And the list goes on.
You got to go straight to the people. You got to go to the alternative media. You got to go to social media. And Bolsonaro did not concede. All he said was, okay, this is where the votes came out now, and we will engage with the transition as the Constitution allots. But he specifically did not concede, and he also said to Brazilians, you have the right to protest. That's a constitutional right. There is a military audit going on in the Brazilian Constitution. The military has the right to oversee if there's election fraud, and then right those wrongs, enforce the law against those perpetrators. And in this case, it's the Supreme Court and the Supreme Electoral Court. Much like post-communist nations, who have the same practices, the judiciary is wielded as a cudgel, not as a deliverer of justice, but as an executor of a political agenda. And that is what's played out here, and the people are taking to the streets to reject it and rebel against it.
Matthew, let me be an advocate of the devil for a second. There was a pattern, a narrative in the media that basically we do have Bolsonaro, who was a man elected and supported by the people who are wealthy, let's put it this way, or at least they have more money than the people who vote for Lula, which is understandable that probably Lula got better chances to win the election. What's your take on this? We actually heard very similar narrative about Donald Trump in the United States some time ago.
All politics now is not local, it's global. And the same narratives run out against Trump, the suppression polling, the reflexivity creating polling. They said in the first round, going to the first round, that Lula would win handily in the first round, that he was up over 50%. Bolsonaro was in the 30s, that Lula was up 15 points on him. It was 4 points in the end. I don't think that was honest, but that showed you how wrong it was. And then in the second round, Bolsonaro was leading until every ballot drop after 10% precincts reported went one way, including in Bolsonaro's strongholds. Recall, all of Bolsonaro's candidates for governor, senator, and lower house Chamber of Deputies won. Amazing mandates, historically unprecedented mandates. So something is rotten in the state of Brasilia, in the state of Brazil, to paraphrase Hamlet with Denmark. People know that something is off, and I was in Brazil when they were doing rallies and marching and chanting, "We want paper ballots, we want auditable ballots." They're going to fight for it now.
And Matthew Tillman actually was talking about this scenario 2 months ago, 3 months ago on Rack On?
4 months ago.
Matthew.
2 weeks ago.
See you soon. Matthew, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. We see each other on this show on Tuesday.